I'm here with Daniel Weinmann, the CEO of Seasoned, and I'm Angelo. And one of the things that got my curiosity when I started talking to Daniel, when we started working together, is that they built software using Remix. I would like to ask Daniel, why? Why Remix?
Why Remix? I've been a web developer for many, many years, and I always loved two things: great UI UX and productivity. But because I always worked with early stage startups, and when I had to choose between productivity and great UI UX, I chose productivity. Because that's how you make things happen and not end up with the kind of software project that drags and drags and drags for months and months and months. What Remix brings to the table is the possibility of having great UX, UI UX, and I mean like world-class UI UX, as good as you want for very little cost. One example, if I want to submit a form or click a button that changes data, and then I click the button, I want to add a spinner to say that the change is going to happen. It's happening. You can do this one or two lines of code in Remix, and you cannot do that with one or two line of codes in Next.js, for example.
I know. Yeah, you cannot.
If I want to make the UI optimistic in the sense that I click the button and I show UI as if the change has already happened, and then if an error happens, I show the error. In Remix, it's easier to do the second one than the pending state.
The optimistic is easier to do.
And this changes the game in terms of the quality of the experience. For example, we just launched Flashboard as an MVP that we built in a month and a half. And it does not have that MVP feel. It feels like an app that's done. Of course, it does not have all the features that one might expect, etc., etc. But the features that we have, they feel like they're done, especially on the UI side. For example, we could have with good old Ruby on Rails or Laravel or this kind of stuff and do an old school web app with great UX. Just doing things on the server, but not having the optimistic UI, not having the pending states. Basically, you reload the page every time. And you can still have a great UX because UX has a lot to do with how you write stuff, how you design stuff, how you care about the user. And you still can achieve that with old school frameworks. To be honest, the way Next.js works, you cannot achieve the same level of UX you can with Ruby on Rails unless you work more to add the pending UIs, to add the optimistic stuff, etc., etc. So when I say that Remix allows us to provide a world-class UI UX, is because it allows us to do that at the same cost that we would to achieve the old school version where you refresh the page every time.
And Remix doesn't only bring to the table just a good UX, but also bring some DX, right? Some developer experience, some stuff that make coding easier, right?
And more fun.
More fun. That's nice.
That's the part. I, as you know, when you worked with us before, I wasn't coding much, right?
Yes.
I was leading a big team. It was tough. Lot of meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings. And we used similar approaches to the ones Next.js have, or at least to the ones Next.js was trying to solve for.
At the moment, yeah.
Yeah, coding was not fun then because you had to do the backend and then you had to do the front end and then you have to make them communicate and make sure the request. It was a lot of work to achieve the end result.
Felt like we were juggling stuff instead of
80% of the time we were dealing with client-side state management and how to synchronize the client state with the backend state.
Yeah, most of the times, yeah.
And that's what Remix does for you. 2008, and then again 2010, 2011 were the years where I did a lot of stuff with Ruby on Rails, like rapid prototyping, building new products like that. And every time I had an idea, I would implement it and test it instead of like doing market research or this kind of stuff, right? In those days, like between 2008 and 2013, I would say, were the years where I felt the most productive until I met Remix. And then after I experimented Remix, I changed my career. I delegated the management part to other people and freed myself up for coding and creating products. And I've been basically on that mode again. Like I have an idea, implement it, and I show it to people. Some work, some don't. And I have a lot of fun doing that.
Awesome. That's amazing.
But that wasn't possible with the React way, or at least the old React way, because now React is changing. But the traditional React way, where we would have a single page application on the client and a REST API or GraphQL API on the backend and synchronizing them both, etc. I couldn't launch my ideas as fast. So I just didn't make them. It's not that I would have to choose, okay, this year I'm going to focus on this idea or this semester. Like right now it's like, I think, I build, I test, go.
Awesome. That's great. And I know you said you don't want to get too technical, but if
I can, of course. I just,
if
didn't
we
want
were
to.
talking here, no, that's great. Because it got to a point where I think it's interesting, because if we are talking with people that want to get into Remix, like for instance, I have been using Next.js for the past years, and I learned a lot how to work with it, because it's a special monster. You have to learn the dealings of it. And let's say I want to get into Remix right now. Like what do you think are the main topics that you have to understand this and that as a basis, in order to get into that?
I would say there are two kinds of people. If you come from a web background from before React, Angular, before the client-side frameworks, if you learn to do web development before that, just go and try it out, check the docs, and you get it immediately. You need to know React, of course, because Remix is built on top of React, but just enough. You don't need to deeply understand React to use Remix, but the more you understand, the better. But if you learn the web after these frameworks were the norm, dude, you're gonna have to unlearn a ton of stuff.
Yeah, that's my feeling, because I'm that guy. I learned the web with React, basically. Like when I started doing JavaScript, as soon as React landed, like me and the team I worked at the time, we jumped into it and say, okay, oh my god, this solves so many problems.
But what were you doing before?
I was doing graphic design.
Okay, so you literally.
Yeah, I started like I did, I think, one or two very simple applications with vanilla JavaScript, and we had a lot of problems and a lot of workarounds, a lot of stuff that we were doing with jQuery. That
were you doing Ajax queries?
Not that much, because of the way
Did
that
you
we
render
worked.
on the server or on the client for your
Everything client.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great use case.
For
Did
you
you
to
know what event.prevent default means?
I knew because I prevented everything.
Yeah.
Like I don't want any button to do anything or any form to do anything, because at the time we don't want the page to refresh. Everything is client side, every state, everything. So for me, this was like basic. Oh, you go code something, prevent default, everything.
When you add event.prevent default on forms on submit, do you know what you're preventing right now? Have you learned already? What were you preventing then?
I think so. Because right now, if I don't add a prevent default, it's going to make a request.
Yes. And this kind of stuff, a lot of people don't even understand.
Wait, I do know this now because I've been taking a look at frameworks like Remix,
Okay.
Because before, no, like the whole thing about having a form submit and it doing stuff was not what I wanted. I wanted to code the stuff. But in reality, now understanding a little better, I can see how much work that was.
Yeah. And the browsers already do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And to be fair, what Remix does is not the same as the default. Remix internally calls prevent default. and it does its magic to make the developer feel like they are using the default, but they're not. But Remix, for example, if you had a JavaScript error, or if you have JavaScript disabled for any reason, or if you're on a tunnel and you haven't had the chance to load the JavaScript yet, Remix will do the default by default. So when they add their event prevent default is an enhancement, like a progressive enhancement.
This is awesome.
Yeah, but going back to your question, you will have to unlearn a lot of stuff, and you're going to have to learn how the web works. So what I would do if I wanted to learn, if I were in your shoes and I wanted to learn the basics, I would learn Ruby on Rails. Or if you don't want to learn Ruby on Rails, learn any kind of 100% server-side rendering approach to learn the web. You can use like a TypeScript server just so you don't need to learn a new language, but then you would need to render HTML from the server, not JSON. And then you render HTML from the server, and then you make changes to the state of the server by submitting a form, and then you handle on your server a post request, for example. Make the changes and then render HTML or redirect. This is how the web works, basically. And I would try to learn that just so I understand how the web works, and then it will be easier to understand Remix. That being said, if you go through Remix's tutorials and you just start using it, you're gonna build web apps and websites with much more ease, I think, at least, than if you were to learn Next.js from scratch, for example.
That's the feeling, because I did both at the Remix. At the time I did it, it had two tutorials, one very quick one and one lengthier one, and I did both. And the feeling I had is that I was learning much more about how the web works than how Remix works. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, like, of course, there were some Remix sprinkles there to make the forms work, to make the server actions and stuff like that. But most of the stuff I was having to take care of were much more like standard web stuff, like building a form properly.
Yeah.
Instead of having 1,000 different libraries and stuff, like, you know. So this is the kind of feeling I had when I did those tutorials, and I also highly recommend them to anyone that wants to start, because at least you're going to have a look and, okay, all right, so this is how this works. And it felt really simple in a way that I was so used to very complicated and huge files and huge amount of files, you know, like a lot of stuff, calling a lot of stuff and a lot of libraries, that when I did the Remix tutorial, I was like, come on, this is not that hard. There's a caveat here. And when we started working together again, and I started taking a look and what we're building here with Flashboard, that's the stuff, man.
Yeah.
It's there.
You probably seen few instances of use state, use effect, use memo, use callback.
Yeah.
And we do have them, because when we're creating the more advanced UI, especially for UI components, we have use state for managing if a menu is open or not, this kind of stuff. But we do not have application state management. And we just don't. We used Remix's approach with loaders, actions, and all that jazz. So it's much, much simpler. But the reason I do it is so I don't have to compromise between great UX and time to market. Like, I want to launch fast, and I want it to be good, basically.